Hello, it's Cryptolyze. I hope you are well. This Wednesday, November 2023. We're meeting today to talk about BNB. I know it hasn't been long, but given the news, I think it's super important to come back to the impact of the news on Binance, on BNB, on what is going to happen, at the same time, the exchange itself. Because it's not just the BNB that is impacted, there's the exchange, there's the funds, there's everything that goes on it. So I think it's important to do a little update on it, even if it's just quick. As a reminder, you always have the possibility of having free access to the educational course, which is a 60-hour training worth €400, which allows you to learn blockchain, crypto, investment, analysis technique, trading, everything to become profitable. Through 130 videos, 400 pages of guides, quizzes to find out where you are in your progress, and all for free. To have access to this lifelong training, simply use the platform of one of our partners. Everything is explained in the comments and descriptions. Before talking about the news, we will obviously recall what Binance is and the role of BNB in Binance. So Binance is the biggest exchange that exists in terms of crypto volume. It's more than 50 of the volume. And they went up to 65. Yes, you mean 65, so we are really on the juggernaut of crypto. And currently, it is the one with the largest compliance department and which is established in the most countries. Next to it, we find ourselves on an exchange which is rather classic with absolutely everything to be able to do what we want on crypto. Whether on buying, on selling, on the launchpad. We have a earning system, we have a whole research system. We have a wallet next to it, which has also been launched wallet, which is a form of MPC wallet. So that means that we and GT does not need to store its seed phrase, and at the same time we are behind something which is truly proprietary. That is to say, we really own our cryptos, and which is integrated into the Binance ecosystem, which is pretty good. And next to it we have the BNB chain, which is the Binance blockchain in which BNB gravitates. In this BNB chain, we have an ecosystem that is really huge with many, many decentralized finances. As a reminder, these are the ones who managed to draw. Really did well when there was the previous bull run of 2021 in which we had the advent of decentralized finance. Ethereum was saturated and BNB cannibalized. At the time, it was called the BSC chain. In fact, cannibalized globally all the volume and everything that could not be on Ethereum was on the BNB chain. And as long as it was linked to Binance, it was super simple and it was effective. Next to BNB, we have a whole burning system in relation to the fees which are recovered on the Binance platform. Because BNB is used both on the platform itself, whether in the launchpad, whether to pay fees, and whether in internal monetary transits at Binance, everything is directly on the infrastructure of the BNB chain. So we have a BNB which has a double utility, one on the BNB chain and two at the Binance level. On the other hand, we have the BNB chain, which is evolving enormously because it is something which is rather centralized. They went from 20 nodes, I don't know if it was 21 or 23 validation nodes, to double 4041, but it's relatively low. We know very well that they blocked the BNB chain from the moment there was a hack at some point. They stopped it to stop the funds and then restart. So we really have a form of centralization, we have to be aware of it, but on the side we have something that evolves very quickly in which they integrate all the new technologies into it, in which we have here OPBNB and ZKBNB, which are two scaling solutions which are integrated directly into the BNB chain, which makes it possible to drastically reduce transaction fees. So, that being said, I gave a very quick reminder. We are going to talk about the news. The news is that Binance US was already in difficulty in the USA, where we had a regulatory framework which had great difficulty accepting Binance in the USA. Binance US was losing more and more market share, and we even knew they were going to be stopped. Except that it went much further. We know that Binance had been prosecuted in the USA for some time already, notably since 2018 for cases of money laundering and monetary transit and separation of funds. This is something that we already had in mind, we knew it, and there it is. It's managing, it's finishing this part, and the way it was done is where we're going to talk a little bit. That is to say that it was done with a big check for $3 billion to be paid by Binance, plus a check for $175 million from CZ. So the CEO and founder of Binance, plus more, and where it's very important, several things. 1. Binance must imperatively withdraw from the USA, must be under the supervision of the USA for 5 years, which is enormous for a crypto project. Then we have CZ, who will have to return to the USA in February to receive his sentence, which means knowing what he will be sentenced to. We have a bail, we have a fine, but on the other hand, we have a sentence which is likely to arrive, and it is a maximum of 18 months in prison, so we could have CZ who does a stint in prison, even if I think that it's quite unlikely, it's still a probability. Behind, I think we will have another big fine to drop, and to know that suddenly CZ has come down from the position of CEO of Binance. So we cannot hide, Binance was still largely represented by CZ, and CZ behind was really the figurehead of crypto and the regulation of crypto. And so here we have a second big blow that happened to the general ecosystem, and as a result, now we have another CEO who will take over, who is Richard Tang, who is a specialist mainly in the notion of regulation, and they will appoint someone who will be at the head of regulations, and who will be the liaison with the American government on regulations. So this implies that behind, at the level of Binance, we will have all the transactions, everything which will be scrutinized by the USA, and therefore we risk having a set of additional news which will arrive. I have no doubt about it not, and it's going to be quite sporty, I think, in the news. What is interesting to see is especially the way in which it was carried out. Note that not so long ago there was another CEO who started from a company, not to name it, OpenAI, who walked out, who is coming back. There we have CZ a few days later who leaves. We have regulatory pressure which is really very strong, whether on the two current economic narratives in which we have crypto and we have artificial intelligence. So obviously we have the USA, which is in full economic policy in the sense that we waged an economic war. We restructure and regulate by force, and it works. As a result, they suddenly got their hands on 50 of the crypto volume. Understand, this is the information you need to remember. So what has changed for Binance? Well, already I think that in the coming weeks/days, we are going to have a certain number of news on additional information, additional regulations, additional KYC at the level of Binance and management of fund transfers, which and GT, likely to be relatively significant. What is interesting to see is that in the meantime, we had a percentage of 834 on the USDT on the flexible, which was made available. So the fact of depositing USDT, we were paying that, and that is exactly the amount that we had as a reminder to FTX when they needed liquidity, and that's quite recent. So that means that in fact there was already preparation for the fact that potentially they were going to need liquidity to be able to precisely pay this type of fine. So I don't know if it's already paid, when it's going to be paid, but in this case we know that it's going to hurt Binance's accounts, that's for sure. I think that it is already provisioned. I think that there is no liquidity problem at the level of Binance, but there will certainly also be a form of fear which will set up with a classic bank run like we already had with FTX. We risk also having the beginning of a bank run, but I really think Binance looks insufficiently strong to accept this and anticipate this and not break. On the other hand, what will be important will be the price of BNB. We do not forget that there is a large part of Binance's assets in terms of weight and dollar weighting, which is linked to BNB and the volume of BNB that it owns, and therefore obviously this means that if we ever have a bearish breakout at the level of BNB, we could have a notion of Binance's solvency, which would be, and GT, implicated. And once again, I am talking about solvency. I am not talking about user funds on this. I am almost sure that there are no problems with user funds. But the notion of solvency that, will I be able to pay my charges? I remind you that it is the largest exchange which employs a huge number of people, all over the world, with infrastructure costs which are monumental, and therefore that means that at some point we will have to give in to restructure. What is interesting is that it is happening now. It is happening at the moment when we have a BlackRock which can trigger a bull run. We have a BlackRock which can have the validation of its ETF. We are going to have an explosion in volumes. And what is also interesting is that we have other exchanges in the USA which are linked to giants from the USA which are also being established. It's interesting to see how everything really comes together perfectly for this year, 2024, 2025, at least for the USA. and the way in which they managed to regain control of something in which they had zero control in a few strokes of pressure and a few strokes of intimidation. We must not kid ourselves. It works very well, and we agree on what we see. There, in all cases, we knew that Binance had taken sidesteps, we strongly suspected, to have an expansion as rapid as they were able to have. That means that there are certain laws, certain lines which have been crossed. And there we see, although the repercussions are happening, and I think that we will have repercussions on other exchanges in which we may also have had other liberties which have been taken, I think that we will have a series of news that will be put in place. And my question is, behind it we are going to have the SEC, which is going to put pressure on BNB and on other cryptos, because it could happen. Understand that now the USA has access to all the information from Binance. So that means that BNB can very well find themselves in a form of securities, therefore very strong pressure at the level of BNB and any other crypto which has gone through the notion of launchpad. So always be very careful, we could have impacts that will happen. In terms of the course, what can we expect? We're not going to go over the classics, so I invite you to watch the other videos, but we're really going to focus on what's happening. Clearly, we have already been in a range for some time between 350 and 200. This is the really key level. This is the level in which, for me, Binance systematically buys these parts. Once again, this is pure speculation in relation to my vision of Binance funds and fund management, but it is a level that is key. If we break the 200 and we break the lowest at 185, I think we will retest very, very low with a vision in the 50 and a potential stop in the 120 that I have already told you given the information. On that, we had a little break-off structure, which was really very clean in the break of 238, with an instantiation above 238, with a retest of the 250, and in which we were closing above this really important liquidity zone. We see that we are settling below. Here we have had the bearish break, and we are settling below. If we are ever below 240, and we close weekly below 240, it is not a good sign. This means that we will certainly go and retest the 200 here and there. We will have to see if we will have enough capital/manipulation with what is currently underway. To do without, to repurchase the BNB internally and have a reacceleration. Wouldn't we have a form of bearish case here which could cause the BNB to be relatively low? And there we would have to pay attention to the entire ecosystem and the impact that that could have on the entire crypto ecosystem and the entire ecosystem around BNB, because Binance is present in a lot of businesses, in a lot of crypto players, in a lot of blockchain. So we will have to be very careful about the impact we can have. This is a systemic risk, although I think it is controlled at the moment, and it is not in the interest of the USA, once they have taken control of this platform, to make it to flow. In any case, that's not my view on that. Don't hesitate to tell me what you think in the comments. So for me, we will wait for the weekly closing. On that note, we close below 250. There is a good chance that we will retest the 200 if we ever manage to restart the rise. This implies that the market has accepted this news, and therefore there at that moment, we will have a sign which will be rather bullish with a break with a validation by the break of the 273. At that moment, we go very, very high. We go straight away to the 300 to retest, in fact, and cannibalize all this imbalance and retest the area before setting up the SEC here, that and GT. This is the news from ASEC. So imagine that if in the coming days we have the SEC suing Binance for BNB because they have access to new information, well, I can tell you that there we break this zone there, and we will directly retest the 181. And either we buy back, and therefore at this moment we start on the rise, so much the better. Or we do not buy back, and we consolidate below. And there we will have a signal with a consolidation below the 200 to get much lower in GT. And there it will be something which will, I think, hurt the entire market, and therefore it is imperative to protect ourselves from what is happening. First of all, don't forget that the crypto market will take time to digest this news, and I think that we will have other news that will arrive in addition to this one around Binance, because now Binance, and in the coming weeks, will give much more open information to American regulators, and therefore behind at the SEC, and therefore behind all American institutions, and therefore this implies that we risk having other lawsuits, other actors who will be implicated, so we could have in the weeks, months ahead, a set of bad news, and we must prepare for this possibility. On the other hand, what is really positive is that the market did not stall on the news of CZ. We could have had a very strong stall, and that is why I am telling you that the really key level is the 240 we must consolidate above. I hope you liked this video. If so, don't forget to leave me a like and a comment. It always makes me very happy. And don't forget that we're meeting for the live on YouTube Sunday 26 November at 20 to celebrate the channel's 2 years. And yes, it's already been 2 years, 30,000 subscribers. It is with pleasure that we will discuss together around crypto, around macro. We will talk about Binance. We will talk about lots of things. Don't hesitate to mark it in your calendar 26, November 20, and I'll tell you until tomorrow 7 for the daily.